Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Megan and I'm a sustainable life and style blogger. I have gotten a ton of questions over the past few weeks, especially about my career, my education journey, sustainability in general. So I wanted to do a big Q&A video answering as many questions as I can. I'm going to be talking about my major in school, why I decided to get a master's, internships, sustainability in fashion, all of that good stuff. I got a lot of questions about what I do, what my major was in school, my area of study, my background story of how I got to where I am and what inspired me. So let me do kind of a broad introduction. I always knew that I wanted to work in the fashion industry. I loved fashion in high school and even before then. I started a fashion blog when I was a freshman in high school called Tunes and Tunics, and it was all about fast fashion. I think my tagline was like, fashion on a babysitter's budget. So I kept that blog up all through high school and decided around the time I was getting ready to go to college that I wanted to work in fashion marketing. I had done a ton of social media marketing for my own blog and just loved looking at different social media ads for different brands, and so that's what I thought I wanted to do. From working with my blog, however, I also knew that I really liked kind of the numbers side of my blog. I loved looking at my analytics and just seeing where people were coming from and how people were interacting with my posts. So I thought maybe a broader business degree would be better for me than a more specific marketing or finance or analytics major. So I ended up going to the University of Southern California, and my undergraduate major was business administration. It's a very broad degree. We took economics classes, finance, marketing, strategy, just a ton of baseline business classes, and then you could choose a specialization with your electives in your senior year. For some reason, I had a lot of trouble putting together my first semester of classes, just like registering for classes that fit at the times that I wanted to go to class. So I ended up signing up for a GE that I was not excited about at all, and that was Intro to Environmental Studies. I just thought it was going to be boring. I just was not interested and was really trying hard to switch out of that class. Another class I took freshman year was another required freshman course at USC, and that was my freshman writing class. Now, every writing class had a different subject or topic. I chose mine solely on reviews of the professor and what time the class was at. So I ended up in issues with sustainability. And it was the combination of those two classes that completely changed my education journey, my career goals, my interests, just like everything. I joke that first semester was life-changing, but it really was, especially with those two classes. My first ever college paper was for my writing class, and we had to write about issues with sustainability in the industry where we wanted to work. So obviously I knew I wanted to work in the fashion industry and decided to write about that. And it was either my professor or somebody in my class that recommended that I watch the True Cost documentary, and that completely changed my view of the fashion industry and sustainability and just everything. If you haven't watched that yet, I absolutely recommend it. I also think living with my roommate is what also inspired me to get really into sustainability. She at the time was an environmental engineering major and then switched to environmental studies. And just being around somebody while I was having this kind of environmental sustainability awakening, being around somebody who's already really passionate about that was definitely a cool experience. From there, I kind of tailored my electives around this newfound interest in environmental studies. I wasn't so keen on taking chemistry, which was a requirement for an environmental studies major or minor, so I decided that was not the route that I wanted to go. But I took a ton of electives like oceanography, which is a general science class and elective, but I learned about gyres and ocean patterns and ocean warming and ocean acidification and plastic pollution in the ocean, which are all related to sustainability. I also took a political science GE that was about environmental challenges and environmental policy. And I also took another GE that was in the environmental studies school, but it was about the human impact of different environmental issues. So like how pollution impacts human health, things like that. I didn't actually major in sustainability or environmental studies or anything. I was a business major. And in an effort to try to find more classes about sustainability, I literally searched sustainability in USC's course catalog and found a class called Sustainable Supply Chains. I had no idea what a supply chain was at the time. I think I was a sophomore when I did this search. But after talking about it with my dad and doing some more research, it seemed like supply chain management was kind of the most effective way for me to think about making an impact in the fashion industry. So I looked more into that class, and it was part of a master's program called the Global Supply Chain Management program at USC, and I decided to apply. USC has a program called the Progressive Degree Program, where if you're an undergraduate student and you have a good enough GPA, you can apply to start a master's program early. So I applied to this program as a junior, I got in, and then during my senior year, I was both starting my master's and finishing my undergraduate degree. At that point, I knew that I wanted to study supply chain management, and there was only one undergraduate elective course in operations, not even supply chain in general. So that was a good option for me to just get even more education in what I knew I wanted to study without having to go get work experience first or work in a position where I didn't feel qualified or didn't like the work that I was doing. I had a question about if and how I incorporated my master's into my undergrad to save time and money, and that's how I did it with the progressive degree. I will say that it was not easy. It was really difficult, and I mean, to be doing 2 degrees at the same time is just hard. But I also was the only progressive degree student in my cohort. I know that's changed. I think there are like 10 in the cohort of 80 or 90 this year, which is amazing. But to be the only student going through that is really difficult. How did you figure out what you wanted to do? I'm graduating next year and have no idea what to do. It's funny you ask, because I still don't know exactly what I want to do. I did just graduate with a specialized master's degree, but supply chain is still a really broad area. I think in general you'll just have these kind of like aha moments where you, like me, I was searching for classes with the word sustainability in it, and I found this sustainable supply chains class, and I was just like, that sounds exactly like what I want to do. And your career journey is not linear. Most people don't just go to school and figure out that's what I want to do and that's what they end up doing for the rest of their lives. Like, that's not how it works. But if you're doing research and looking at the things that you really enjoy and want to learn more about, I feel like you're bound to have a kind of aha moment and just say, that makes sense. Like, something will just click. If it doesn't click, that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just takes time to figure out what you want to do. I mean, I'm only 22. There's no way I can predict what I'll be doing in 10 years. Especially in sustainability, this field is changing so quickly, so don't put pressure on yourself to know exactly what you want to do. Just think about what inspires you, what motivates you, what keeps you really interested in what you want to learn more about, and go from there. So now moving into questions about school. How did grad school help you, and is it worth risking burnout for a master's degree? This is a great question. So I am definitely glad that I got my master's. As I said, there was no option for me as an undergraduate to major in supply chain management, and I loved USC so much that I didn't want to transfer. I also found that USC had a really well acclaimed supply chain management program, and so I knew there would be opportunities for me if I joined the master's program at USC and stayed there. I also got really great internship experience because of my master's. I'm sure I'll touch on this later, but I interned at Tom's before I even started my master's program in a supply chain role because I had literally on my resume that I had been accepted to this supply chain management program. So even with no experience, the name of the school and the program carried enough, as well as my other expertise. I am a smart gal, but that carried enough weight that I was able to get a great opportunity. As for burnout, I definitely reached that too many times. It's a 1.5 year long program that I did over 2 years, but for one of those whole years I was also finishing my undergraduate degree, so doing 14 semesters worth of classes over a 10 semester period of time was insane. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you know that you are prone to burnout, but I will say, especially over the 2 years that I've been in my master's, I just prioritized myself and my health, and I definitely sacrificed my social life a little bit, and maybe didn't get to go to as many fun events as I would have wanted to, but I don't necessarily regret it. In terms of handling burnout, it's just really important to know yourself and what you need and have those outlets and the ability to really just be with yourself or do whatever you need to recharge so that you don't reach that point. But as a whole, I am so glad that I decided to do my master's, and I wouldn't quite say the burnout was worth it, but in the end, I feel very accomplished and I am glad that I did the program. Did I study abroad? No. I loved USC so much as an undergrad that I just didn't want to leave for a whole semester. I also am not great with change. I just didn't think I would be able to get the most out of that experience. I think it would have been quite stressful for me, actually. That being said, I did kind of take every opportunity I could as a student to travel abroad with my classes. So I did travel to 3 countries. It was supposed to be 4, but 1 trip was canceled due to coronavirus. As freshmen, I traveled to China, Shanghai, and Beijing with my business class. We visited different companies and got to learn about international business, especially in China. In the first year of my master's program, we went to Singapore and Malaysia to learn about the ports there and kind of transportation and supply chain and logistics in that region of the world. I took an elective digital strategies for sustainability class this semester and was supposed to go to Denmark, Copenhagen specifically, to do a consulting project with a company there. But that was supposed to happen after spring break, so that trip got canceled. I didn't study abroad for a whole semester, but I was able to travel to 3 countries with my classes in a business setting, which I feel like I got so much out of and has been really helpful in my internship experience, and I'm sure it will be helpful in my work experience in the future. Was I in any environmental or activism clubs? Not really. Not really until this year. I had another question about how did I balance schoolwork and my social life. My social life kind of revolved around my clubs and organizations, which I don't necessarily recommend. But I, as an undergrad, was just really involved in a ton of clubs. As a sophomore for a semester, I was on the executive board of 3 clubs, which is too much. I don't recommend it, but I was just really involved. There was a fashion industry association club. I was involved in a youth mentoring and summer camp club. I was an active member of my sorority and was on my executive board there. Yeah, so I just was part of a lot of clubs that took up a lot of my time, and I got so much out of those organizations. One of those clubs did directly conflict with the Environmental Student Assembly organization, which has a bunch of umbrella organizations, but I valued my mentorship club more than being part of this ESA organization, so that's kind of a trade-off that I made. This year, though, I did get involved in a new organization, even though I was a grad student, which is called the Wrigley Student Ambassadors. We have an environmental studies institute on Catalina Island, and as part of that club, our idea was to integrate sustainability into the curriculum of every major at USC. A lot of times, especially in the business school, I feel like sustainability is just an add-on. So in my operations class, we always optimize things for cost. Every problem is optimized to have the lowest amount of cost. And then we have one class where we talk about corporate social responsibility, sustainability, ethics issues, which all come down to it's bad to just optimize to cost. And then the next class we go back to optimizing to cost. And so that's kind of a trend in education everywhere, but this group of students wanted to change that and how sustainability is taught at USC. A lot of our initiatives got cut short since classes were moved off of campus, but that was a really great organization to get involved with. I was able to connect with a lot of other sustainability-minded students on campus from a ton of different majors. So if you ever have the opportunity to do something like that, if there is a club, or start your own club, that was a great experience that I wish I had when I was an undergrad as well. Moving on to career and internships. What types of internships did you do in college, and what did you look for in one? So I had 3 different internships in college. My first one was when I was a junior, I believe, and that was during the school year. I had a bit of a light semester, and I had strategically planned my classes to just be on Monday and Wednesday so that I could intern Tuesday and Thursday and have Friday off. So I did just a general Google search for sustainable fashion brands in LA looking for interns. I think it was literally just a Google search. I didn't look on Free Fashion Internships or LinkedIn or anything. And I came across this brand, YSTR. The job posting was a little bit sketchy, but I looked at the social media and I looked at the website of the brand and it seemed really cool. It was this make-to-order, zero-waste, ethical brand that was made in LA. And they were looking for a marketing intern. It said it was unpaid. At that point, I was kind of desperate for any kind of experience, so I applied and went into interview and ended up getting the job. The company was really cool. There were 3 full-time employees, all women, and I was the intern, so I was there 2 days a week. And half of the office were our desks where we did all the business side of it. The other half of the office was our cutting and sewing team, our pattern maker. So it was a really cool work environment to be in. At that point, I knew eventually I wanted to go into supply chain management, but I thought any kind of experience in fashion would be helpful in trying to get another fashion internship, which is why I took this in the marketing field. I got another question about opinion on unpaid internships. So I took this as an unpaid internship thinking that I just wanted to get the experience. I could have a few months, I could work for the semester and then get something that was paid. After 2 weeks, my manager literally said, "This is not fair trade, you're doing great work, so we're gonna pay you." So I ended up getting paid, which was amazing. I do know in some industries, unpaid internships are just the norm. Do I think it's ethical? Absolutely not. If you're doing real work for the company, you should be getting paid. But I know that at USC, we have a big music industry program, and I know people that interned every single semester that they were at school at some kind of record label, and all of those internships are unpaid. So it just depends on the industry, which is really unfortunate. If you do find yourself with the option to have an unpaid internship and you're able to take that and financially survive without getting paid, make the absolute most out of that experience. Network like crazy with the people that work there. Make sure you get recommendations from them once you're done when you apply to other internships. Go to events that are happening with the company. Take every opportunity you can to learn more, even outside of your job role. So for example, I was in marketing at YSTR, but since it was such a small company, I was able to participate in operations companies. I met with the financial investors, so I learned as much as I possibly could to make the most out of my experience. So that was during the school year of my junior year. YSTR ended up shutting down, unfortunately. But then I started looking for internships over the summer. I applied to a ton, everything from supply chain to social media. I think I must have applied to 30 or 40 internships that year. And one of them ended up being Tom's, and that was for a supply planning internship. I did not really know at this point what supply chains were or what supply planning was, but I had a broad idea of what a supply chain was. So I was very crafty in the way that I finessed my experience at YSTR to apply to Tom's. As I mentioned with the YSTR internship, we had our whole cutting and sewing team in the same office space as us. So I said something along the lines of like, was able to see all in-house operations take place, from design to pattern making to cutting and sewing and shipping. So even though I was in a marketing role, I could tie that to what I was applying for. So I was applying for a supply chain position, and I talked about how the whole supply chain was in that one office where I was working. I'll put up a screenshot. I actually, during my interview with Tom's, they were looking at my experience, and the man who ended up being my manager said, "Interesting experience," because at that point all I had on my resume was being a camp counselor, having a fashion blog, and working at this startup in a fashion marketing role. So it was interesting to him that I wanted a supply chain position. But I was able to, as I said, kind of finesse my way into showing that I had an understanding of supply chains and could learn really quickly, even though I had no experience. So I ended up getting that internship at Tom's. It was a great experience, and I think the best thing about it was that it was a project-specific internship. So I wasn't just doing day-to-day work that I would do as a supply planner. I was given a specific project, which actually was a huge project to the company. I had to define and create a process that just had no timeline or plan, and that had just kind of been done ad hoc over the years. So I say when you're looking for internships, look for something that's really structured. Tom's also was a small internship program. It's a small company, so it kind of makes sense, but I think there were only 10 of us. And once a week we would meet with a different senior leader from the company. On the first day we had breakfast with Blake Mykowski, the founder of Tom's. We met with the CEO, we met with the head of design. Like, we had so much access to people at the company, and as interns we had so much access to just information and people, and it was an amazing experience. And then the next year, so the year between when I finished my undergraduate degree and when I was going to finish my master's, I was actually recruited by a recruiter at Vans to join their team. They were looking for a demand planning intern. I, again, didn't have any experience in demand planning, but had enough experience in the footwear and apparel industry that I could bring over to this role. Vans was very similar, and then it was a very specific project that was important to the company. And as interns, it was another small internship program, I think 10 or 12 of us. We got to meet with different leaders in the company. I was brought along to a lot of important meetings, and actually ended up staying on for another 7 months after my summer internship ended. So I stayed at Vans part-time while I was finishing my master's. As for what to look for in internships, look for something that is structured. You want to have either a project-based internship or somewhere where you're getting real experience and not just running and getting coffee or doing work that just isn't really valuable to the company. You will get the most support and the most out of an experience when you are given something that's really important to the company. People want you to succeed, and so you're going to get the most experience, in my opinion. And that's a little bit different if you join a startup. You can't have as structured of an internship there, but startups are a great way to get just a ton of experience in a lot of different areas, not just where your internship title is. Those are the internships that I had and the kind of internships that I looked for. Kind of related, I got a question: how do you recommend searching for getting internships and jobs in sustainability? So my biggest tip here is to keep an open mind. I wouldn't necessarily consider Tom's or Vans a sustainable company. They have sustainability initiatives, and Vans' parent company actually has a ton of sustainability initiatives. But I did find ways at both of those internships to work sustainability into what I was doing. So when I was at Tom's, the SVP of supply chain was super into sustainability, and we met to talk about how to make the products more sustainable and how to avoid greenwashing. And I did like market research on other footwear brands and what they were doing in terms of sustainability. So that was a side project, completely not related to what I was doing in my actual day-to-day job, but that was of benefit to Tom's and was really beneficial to me. So always try to voice your interests and try to connect with people that are at that company that are also interested in those things. And when I was at Vans, as I said, there wasn't a ton of sustainability related like product stuff happening at Vans. A lot of it was handled by their parent company, VF. But my mentor over the summer connected me to the traceability team at VF, and so I had a few phone calls with people at the parent company who were in roles that I was really interested in to get a better idea of like what they would look for in a candidate if they were hiring somebody full-time, or what I could do as a student to get the most out of my education if that was something I was interested in going into. So at least that has been my approach. Obviously the dream would be to work for a perfectly sustainable company, but I also think there's a lot you can learn from companies that are trying to do better, and you also can have more of an impact in that way. I got a question about interview tips. So aside from like the general internship advice that you'll get, like ask questions and dress up and do your research, I would say the two most important things are to practice an elevator pitch about yourself. Like you will be asked, tell me about yourself, and you're gonna have a little spiel talking about your education, your interests, and tie that to the company that you're applying for. That's one of my least favorite questions to answer, honestly. Telling me about yourself is so broad, but there are ways to use that to your advantage and get all of the good stuff about you in there. Another tip is to find ways to connect the experience you do have to the job that you're applying for. So the perfect example is that YSTR example, where I was in a marketing role but witnessed the whole supply chain and was able to talk about that eloquently with the hiring manager who ended up hiring me at Tom's. So find ways to demonstrate you have an understanding or a passion or an interest for what you're applying for, and find ways to connect that to what you are passionate about in real life. So having a blog is a very clear demonstrated interest that I'm interested in sustainable fashion. So that's been a really good way and concrete way for me to connect my interest and passion and knowledge in job applications when I haven't actually had a sustainability specific role in a fashion brand. Moving on to the careers section, that was kind of internship focused, and this is more like long-term career type stuff. This is a doozy of a question. How do you balance knowing all of the bad stuff about the industry and still want to work in it? That's the ultimate question. I will definitely say there is a little bit of cognitive dissonance in there. Absolutely. The state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. So yeah, working in fashion when I know all of the issues with fashion is really hard. I will say though, I'm very motivated to create change in the industry, and you kind of have to have that separation. Like, obviously the best thing to do is just not buy any new clothes. But I also know that that's just not realistic. There's no way we're gonna get everyone in the US to just stop buying clothes. It's unrealistic. So the best thing for me to do is to help create change in the industry. And so that's what I'm trying to do. Like, I absolutely refuse to work at a place where greenwashing is acceptable and people lie about their environmental initiatives. But I am fine working somewhere where there is a genuine concern for the planet and for the people in these companies' supply chains and where they're trying to do better. I feel like I have the expertise to help these companies do better. And so it would be doing them a disservice to let them kind of not know what to do. I want to help create change for the companies that really do care. So it is hard knowing all of the bad stuff, but I think also that knowledge gets me more inspired and excited about creating change and doing what I am doing with my degree. So try to find that balance, but it definitely is a struggle. What types of careers are available in sustainability and fashion? Another great question. So I come at it from a supply chain perspective, obviously. So some of the ways that you can get involved throughout the supply chain are in sourcing, so looking at different materials, looking for more natural materials. You could do supplier management, so working to make sure that different factories are upholding labor codes or creating labor codes for that company. Logistics, tracking that information, trying to have better routes, optimizing those routes for the delivery of goods. You also can have a job in design or product development where you're designing products that are made to last and are made from sustainable materials. Even like facilities management, retail stores create a ton of waste, and there's a lot of room for improvement there to make sure things are being recycled properly or reducing waste in retail stores in other ways. Some companies have specific sustainability teams, like a sustainability analyst or sustainability strategy type roles. And there are even now sustainable stylists, sustainable personal shoppers, people who are writing about sustainable fashion for publications like Vogue. There are even jobs in corporate communications for brands that have big sustainability initiatives that need people to be able to communicate those initiatives eloquently and correctly. So there are really a ton of options in sustainability and fashion. If I didn't study sustainability in school, can I still pursue that as a career? That's exactly what I'm doing. I didn't get an environmental studies or sustainability degree, but I did as much as I could throughout school to learn about those topics, and I honestly spend a ton of time outside of school learning about those topics as well. I go to a lot of sustainable fashion conferences and watch a ton of documentaries, read a lot of books. There's a lot of books here and on this shelf about sustainable fashion. I think in order to get a career in sustainability, you need to have a demonstrated interest in sustainability in whatever field you're going into. So something that shows that you have not only a demonstrated interest, but an understanding of that topic. So for me, that's been my blog and my social media. For you, it could be writing for your school newspaper about sustainability, like having a sustainability column, being interviewed on podcasts about sustainability. You could get involved with different clubs or work on projects. Like I did a consulting project with a shipping company that was sustainability focused, or even just taking GE classes related to sustainability. So doing whatever you can to have concrete evidence that even though you didn't major in sustainability, you maybe took a class or have a blog or write this column to show that you have an understanding of that topic. Advice for people not majoring in but still wanting to learn more about sustainability. I have a blog post about different sustainability docuseries and documentaries that I loved on Netflix, so I'll have that linked down below. There are a ton of great podcasts out there. Good Together is one from brightly.eco, which is a great resource. I was just interviewed on Hopefully Sustainable podcast, started by a friend of a friend that has a really positive tone to it, so I will link that down below as well. Going to conferences in your area or any panels or speakers at your school, going to webinars online, literally just any event or area where you could learn more, taking that opportunity. My blog is also a good resource. I will put some posts and other resources linked in the description of this video. If you would want a whole video on that, because I could talk about that forever, comment your questions specifically about that below or let me know that below and I will work on that video as well. And the ultimate question, what do you plan on doing next? That is the question. My absolute dream job would be being a sustainability analyst of some kind for a fashion brand. I think that's where I can take my data analytics skills that I've gotten from my supply chain work and an understanding of the different sustainability issues with materials and in the fashion industry, and applying that to a sustainability role. Obviously, the job market is not the best, especially for the fashion industry right now, so I'm really keeping my options open, expanding also to the clean beauty industry or even sustainable food sources. My ideal job would be directly sustainability related, but I also would be happy working for a company that has really strong sustainability values and working in a more traditional supply chain role. I do want to keep my blog going. I love it. I've had it for almost 8 years now, and I can't see myself giving it up. And I've thought about whether it would be a conflict of interest to be a sustainable fashion blogger working for a fashion brand. So that's something that I'm keeping in mind, which is why I'm also opening up to other industries. But I do really like participating in panels and talking about sustainability in general. So I think even if I do end up working in the fashion industry, I could continue talking about sustainable lifestyle and thrifting and things like that without it being an issue with my full-time job. Right now, for the time being, I'm really focusing on kind of establishing myself as a thought leader in this space. I've moved onto TikTok, which has really just taken off, and that has brought a ton of new people to my blog and my Instagram and my YouTube page. I really want to keep that going. I think there's an opportunity to make something really cool out of that. So thank you if you are a reader of my blog or a viewer of my TikToks or wherever you came to this, for supporting me as a creator in this space and asking all these questions. I've also considered sustainability consulting. I would want that to be for a environmental consulting company, not for a regular consulting company that has a sustainability arm. I think it's really important if I'm going to be doing that kind of work to come from a science-based background and not work on solutions that could possibly be greenwashed. I'm really keeping my options open, taking it day by day, looking at what's available, and just putting a lot of focus into things that are going well for me right now that are helping establish my brand. So that is it for this long video. I've been filming for, I want to say, an hour and a half. I have no idea how short I'm going to edit this video down to be, but we shall see. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was really helpful. I mean, I can't even tell you how many questions I've had about my career or my education. I've had Zoom calls with people to talk about this, and I would love to talk with everybody individually, but I just don't have the time to do that. So this video is my way of answering a lot of those questions. I'm happy to do a second one if people have more questions. Please feel free to comment down below or DM me on Instagram if there's anything else you want me to answer. If you found this helpful, give it a like or share it with somebody who's also looking at entering the sustainability field after they graduate or is not so sure what they want to do. Connect with me on all of my different channels, my TikTok, my Instagram, everything, and I will catch you in my next video.